idea stage, right, to right to the point of distribution. So MOT, right, management technology, is how to move from idea right down across the distribution. And you find that really is a funnel. Many people do not reach the stage. Right? Many people have ideas, but translate to papers, and we're very happy with our journal publication and books, and but it stays there. Very few move towards product, and then even at the product, prototype, each other goes get the distribution that it deserves. Right? This is where the money is going to come in. So this is a new model. It's a new model that I haven't published, and I'm going to work on that. The new ball game is idea to right distribution. And most of the time you'll find, and most of MOT is rather restrictive. It goes to prototype, it goes to product, it goes to idea, of course, from here, right? If you are interested in MOT, you must then translate your idea into a patent, and then before you go into the patents. Right. Now, papers, of course, the idea papers in public sitting, right, in order to get acceptance by the community. Right. So this is the role. Probably have different role instead of, satisfy your humble game, right? And then of course the product, and then the distribution. Okay, now I'm looking for collaborators in biosciences, right, to work together. How to effectively translate idea straight to distribution. So any of you here in your faculty who see this video who wants to contact me, you're welcome to contact me. But by biosciences, what I mean is anything related to biotechnology. Right? And because in implementing biotechnology as a product is very tricky. And biotechnology is very new in ASEAN region. I'll just give you a background of my own work and research at MOT. Right. First of all, I was formerly the Deputy Director for Research for the Center for Engineering and Technology Management. And of course, I focused mainly on research aspects. Right. In 1997, we highlighted, right, the word we, because this is all collaborative work, but it's not the same person I collaborate with. Right. We actually wrote an article where we actually say that in Singapore, despite all the progress that we are enjoying in the 1990s, right, we need to move from a productivity movement to one that is innovative and creativity oriented. Right? So these are all the arguments are here in this journal paper why Singapore should start to shift. And of course, if you read, I was invited to contribute to an encyclopedia published in London on MOT in Asia Pacific. And our central argument is very simple, that all the patents in the world are dominated by a few countries, principally US. Right? And a few key companies hold all the patents in the world. Right? There's huge imbalance in intellectual property assets. Right? Of course, it's very necessary for us to move away from that. And of course, I visited New York Institute of Technology. My role there was really to look into knowledge and how to look upon knowledge as an asset and how to maximize the use of knowledge. And then the fifth one is we actually popularized the term, right? I'm not taking credit to inventing the word technopreneur, but nowadays when they talk technopreneur, they tend to associate them with me. I wrote an article together with my brother, and it appears in Technovation. Whereas I'm on the research side, my brother is on the implementation and executive training side of technopreneur. And one thing I discovered, fortunately my brother is 10 years younger, is that technopreneur favors the young. Right? In fact, the most creative age, to nurture a technopreneur is when he or she is in schools. Okay, now that is why you find that my brother is actually scheduled to give talks to top schools in Singapore on becoming a technopreneur. The idea is that we believe that 16, 17, 18-year-old are the one you've got to inspire and get them excited to become an operator. Only at that age you are young enough and energetic enough, mad enough, alright, to dream and to create. So when I say top school, I don't mean university, but we are meaning to say just A levels, top universities, top pre-universities in Singapore. Then of course, I will try and look into the issue of why the need for MOT, why now, why ASEAN, right? And of course, you find that the word technology is a difficult word to really define, and therefore the definition I'm going to offer is a working definition, something which I'm still not happy with, right? And of course, the technology is important, and why now? And I'll address all these issues, right? And of course, I'll make some remarks that may seem biased. First, what is technology? Technology for me is the engineering of science for commercialization. Right? Universities are actually very bad places to do MOT because most universities have different departments, different faculty. Right? And of course, in theory, they are supposed to interact with tea and coffee, but there are great walls between the different schools and divisions. Right? And of course, you'll find that opportunity don't exist, right, in the division itself. It exists in the interfaces. So you find that all those new breakthrough is always interdisciplinary. The gaps are there because all this, when you have a discipline, your area is more or less research and development established. Whereas therefore the marginal rate of return, for new endeavor is less likely than in the in-between areas. So you have bioengineering, biomechanical, Now, so we may really ask ourselves a simple question of, how do we engineer science for commercialization? That I believe is a role of technology. And of course, you find that, another way of putting it is the translation, of a person knowing into intellectual product. It's an alternative definition. In other words, I know how to do something. I know how to produce nasi lemak such a way that nobody else can replicate it. This is knowing. And the question is, how do we move from this knowing, to a product that is protected, and most importantly, I'll put it bluntly, that it will not be stolen by the Americans as their own product. I think patent law is, I've been a lawyer myself. I think there's gross inequity. If you look at a patent and you assume that that all the knowledge is possessed by the West, but it's not true. The West borrowed them very heavily from the East. What imagine if you have to have accountability and it's called repatriation payment. Maybe we should argue that maybe the state should start paying for the prior knowledge, prior civilization knowledge. Alright, never mind. I'm not going to that philosophical debate, but it's a working definition. But the key really, a broad definition, were how to translate a person knowing into intellectual products so that he or she will be able to exploit her knowledge. But don't forget, the patent law is a very interesting law, Patent, Now, what is a patent essentially? A patent is actually a social contract between the person, the inventor, the thinker, the idea generator, and society at large. In other words, the agreement is that I declare all that I know about how to do a certain thing, and then society will then protect me to the courts for making a disclosure. And the society will give me a window of 15 years to exploit it. So I have exclusive exploitation of that knowledge. So really, you have two options, between patent and trade secrets. Because if you keep things as trade secrets, then in that case, and you can keep that 100% a trade secret, then nobody else can exploit that. So this is a choice. So it's a strategic decision you have to make between patent and trade secrets. Like for example, the formula to make Coca-Cola Coca-Cola is still a secret. Coca-Cola has not yet patented that. So nobody knows the formula. Imagine if Coca-Cola had disclosed that. Then you no longer be a trade secret. And this is going 15 years. There's a window of time protection. Okay, now. So the key idea really is the translation of a person knowing into intellectual products. Now, the question now, of course, very importantly, is whether the traditional MBA, right, is adequate for teaching management of technology. Right? You look at the history of MBA. History of MBA is that MBA came about, emerged, made popular by Harvard. Harvard is actually, case-driven, but it assumed a world that is not heavily technology. Technology was a secondary issue in management of businesses. Right? And of course, the traditional MBA is to provide concept for the general manager to manage large companies. MOT wasn't deeply involved, and therefore you find that how does MBA cope with all this change? Business school. What they try to do is they try and come up with what we call the Roja MBA. Right? So they have a core curriculum, and then they will add on, traditional MBA plus a focus. So you have MBA which is MOT oriented. Right? But in general, this sort of approach may not be the best, may not be the ideal. Right? Because MOT, I think, it's a different discipline altogether. It's something very unique and should not come up, should not evolve all traditional MBA, just like MBA in entrepreneur is crazy. I mean, MBA is supposed to teach us to manage big businesses. Entrepreneur is a different animal altogether. Right. Okay, now, then we move on from there. I wrote an article that is published in the US Journal of High Technology Management Research, and I argued that the rise of artificial firm, right? And my argument was that production technology, right, urbanization, there's a inverted new relationship. So much so that maybe we'll come to the stage where we don't actually need MBA anymore, right? So this is where those who are interested to read about it, I will email you the paper. I didn't include this to take the paper. But I argue that one reason why Japan actually was very successful was simply because in the past, right, they were not exploiting technology. Their technology was not that sophisticated. Once you become very sophisticated at the high end, then the need for organizing started to decline. So that in the future you may have what I call the pure artificial firm, where the role MOT becomes very important. It's management technology as artificial. Therefore, we will be buying the artificial firm. I actually moving from there, right? This is a wake-up call on a different theme, right? I want to use the case of cosmetic rights, right, as a classic example, right, of why ASEAN in particular should begin to relook at technology. For example, there should be a relook into the ASEAN laws of patent protection. Right? ASEAN laws should be revamped, reworked, and maybe we should have working parties to sort of make, for example, number one, the registration of patent easier. Because if you don't do that, then you're going to have a situation where US is stealing through patents. The Indians are crying out. Right? So nasi lemak in American invention, chicken rice, Chinese American. So what they do is they take the traditional one, nobody claim copyright, and they do some genetic to it. They put some science into it, and thereafter they say it's so altered that it becomes American owned. And anybody who actually try and sell American chicken rice, to America will be barred because patent give the person the patent, file the patent exclusive rights. Now, under patent law, there is one basic rule that is unfair, and that is, if patent doesn't care about parallel development, meaning to say, if you have the invention, you have the idea, you know it first, but you didn't bother to file a patent and protect that, and somebody else did, right? And the law will only recognize the guy who first filed it. So it's first past the post policy. Now, of course, patent law is technology. When we have patent, usually have technology. There's a new invention in the States now. They call it the business method patent. Very interesting. Business method patent. And of course, in the States, if you read the US newspapers, people are crying out and say, this is unfair. We have been using this method, this formula for managing insurance and all that. And suddenly somebody filed a patent and he became exclusive rights to the methodology. It only happened a year or two. And I'm looking into this very closely because it becomes accepted that I would alter my game, the way I play the game. I will keep the idea to myself. I'll file a patent. After I get a patent, then I'll write my papers. Right? In other words, I will follow the engineering mode. Right? I will not go the other way around of disclosing the papers because one of the underlying concept of patent is that if you are prepared to tell the world about your invention. Let's say, for example, traditional cookbook, you tell people, how I cook this book and how I cook this rice and nasi lemak, or any form of cooking, curry puff, whatever, and you're prepared to disclose it to some author. Then, as far as the law is concerned, you have willingly relinquished that right, so you cannot file any more patent. You see, these are things that are very interesting that ASEAN should know that these are the ground rules. Australia, they are moving to a situation. Australia, they are going to allow for patents of food, right? And the requirement is that you must be able to describe the taste of that food in such a way that nobody else, right? That it becomes distinctive. You follow what I'm trying to get at? If you can describe in words precisely the aroma of a coffee, for example, how it smells, how it tastes, and so on and so forth, you can describe those in words. Then the Australian authorities will allow you to file a patent to protect that food. It's quite good. So these are things that I think a lot of people are not aware of. They're not alert to. They're not. So basmati rice is a very interesting case study. Right? Why we should be alert? Why we should not be caught sleeping? And of course, a lot of health product. The health product. And of course, you find that some scientists will go to the rainforest and find some of these things, and this may just be traditional cures. Traditional people knew about it, but you see, right? The first scientists will go there, document it, learn it, and then file a patent becomes patented. So this I think we have to look into it very carefully. This is one thing. It's a policy decision for the government. How should we move about to protect our indigenous assets, our indigenous knowledge base? And basmati rice, if you ask the farmers in India, they will tell you that it came about because of hundreds of generations of farmers improving on it, try and error. Like for example, one day Americans will say we have a new method of acupuncture, but acupuncture comes from China, but nobody in China will have patented acupuncture methodology. Or aerobatic cure, you may even patent a method of massage, Okay, now, I'm alerting you to all that, Then, of course, you find that, for Thailand, for example, right, this is where I also argue in very specific term that Michael Porter was invited to Thailand, and the Thai people said it's too expensive, $1 million for a lecture. And I was invited by Bangkok Post to comment on that. And I said, what Thailand really needs to do for its economy is very simple. Alright? We have to move from the productive gradually to the innovative. Not immediately, but we have to. And of course, the Thai king is great. He actually filed a patent on the use of palm oil as a fuel for cars. And his patent was a very good, interesting one because, if you use his method of converting palm oil to fuel, the car that you drive need not be altered. There's no need for any alteration. Okay, now, so this is the, and of course Singapore. I mentioned to you also that Singapore has to move. And this year, Coach Tom actually said that we are going to have innovative culture. Because it is the ideal part that is the most difficult part. It's this innovative part, this creativity part, is a difficult one. Right? And Asian culture, especially Asian culture, we are too traditional. We are too, you know, we are too severe to ideas. So, you know, especially in China, you know, where Confucian thinking teaches you to accept the norm and not to think critically, and you know, right? Innovation, you need for new ideas to emerge, you need to look at the world in a different way, a different angle, and then that's very important. Yes. Okay, now then forum on MOT for ASEAN.